Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MT4MH Studios, where we spread our love and we share our ketogenic lifestyles. This is the Find Your Keto Show, and I'm your host, Stephen T., ready to guide you on your low-carb journey. Today, we have another incredibly inspiring guest, Jacqui Hossfeld. Jacqui and I first met while volunteering for the Metabolic Revolution rally in Washington, D.C. As the volunteer coordinator for the Metabolic Revolution, Jacqui is a passionate advocate for the power of dietary changes and metabolic therapies to transform lives. Jacqui's journey is deeply personal. She's a mom who faced unimaginable challenges as her two children struggled with severe health and mental health issues. Through research, resilience, and a commitment to a low-carb and whole foods diet, she found hope and healing for her family. In this episode, Jacqui will share how she discovered the connection between diet and mental health, the role of mitochondrial function in chronic conditions, and the lessons she's learned along the way. Whether you're a parent, an advocate, or someone seeking answers, this is a conversation you can benefit from. Jacqui, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Steve. How are you doing?
I am great. I'm so happy to have you here.
Great to be here.
It's been a long time coming. You've been on the calendar now for a while.
All good. It works.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have you. So can we start out with a brief overview of your journey and particularly the health struggles that your children faced?
Sure. I found out about low carb eating in 2007 after my daughter was born. So my son was born in 2001, my daughter in 2006. 2007, I was sick of having baby weight. So I went low carb, started doing a lot of research on it. Lost some weight, about 40 pounds. My son was starting to get really sick, and we started to do some research to help him get better. He started to get daily chronic migraines and dizziness and tiredness. We did a lot of research on that, but there's a lot of tension in the family because he would commit to doing something and didn't. So he got worse. Our relationship got worse. My daughter got stressed. She tried to commit suicide by jumping off a bridge at school. That was like the start of the pattern. We would get one kid stable, and then the other one would have an issue. So after that, all my eating went out the window. Trying to take care of her. Gained the 40 pounds back. Then we diagnosed so then she was stable, diagnosed my son with POTS. The migraines stayed. So that was when she was 11, he was 15. He was still getting worse, getting more tired. He was on antidepressants and stimulants. So his mood started to decline more, to the point where we thought he had borderline personality disorder, and our relationship got even worse after that point. That seemed to be going downhill, but reached a plateau at the bottom. He moved in with a family up in Boston for a while, and then COVID came around and the lockdowns. They shut down my daughter's school, and I was livid. I knew at that point we were in for more trouble, and I didn't know how to prevent it. So between then and now, I had lost the 40 pounds again. So we're up to 80 pounds lost. So that's a good thing.
Congratulations.
Gets better. So through the lockdowns and the school shutdown, she tried to commit suicide again. This was ODing. She was taken to the emergency room, and then admitted to an inpatient facility. Last time she hadn't been. So she was in an inpatient facility. When she came out, we were on a 1-year-long suicide watch, 24 hours. So I was on the night shift. Let's just say my weight suffered, my health suffered, my mental health suffered. That didn't go well. She made another attempt a few months later, but we were able to catch it. She was still taken to the ER. and admitted again. After that, after she was released, she did start showing improvements again. My son, however, we did find out that he had a instability in his neck, but it took us at that point 7 years to find it. So your neck is supposed to go like this, like your vertebrae are supposed to work in alignment, but his are kind of going like this. When that happens, you get a lot of referred pain into your head, and that's been happening for 7 years. He's like 6'5" and hyperflexible. So if anybody, he does all that kind of stuff where you can bend your joints in weird ways. So the ligaments and tendons in his neck didn't stack the vertebrae correctly. We found that out. We got a neck brace. We did physical therapy. We passed on the spinal fusion surgery, which would have been insane. So eventually he starts getting on the mend and starts feeling better. And yeah, I lost that 40 pounds. So yeah, that was still 80 pounds down. Eventually he's feeling so good that he decides to get off all the meds at once, including the beta blockers he was taking for POTS.
Oh, no.
And then he had a little marijuana too, which didn't help. Over the next 3 days, he had a psychiatric break, a mental break. He was delusional. He didn't sleep. I mean, at this point, he was living with us again, at least. So yeah, for 3 days, he didn't sleep. I tried to stay up with him. I catnapped whenever I could. We would try like soft music, head massage, like temple massage, soft music, ocean waves. But he couldn't sleep. And he got more and more delusional. He thought he was a mushroom. He was talking about all these wild, crazy ideas. He's not a violent person, so that was never an issue. We never thought he was going to lash out at anybody. And we tried to keep this from my daughter because she was still a little bit unstable at the time. Not as unstable, but more so than normal. The third night, 3 o'clock in the morning, I hadn't heard anything, so I was trying to catnap. Get a knock on the door. It's the police. He'd called the police because he thought his sister was in danger. And, at this point, I'd recorded some of his speech. I said, he's not well, please. He's not going to harm anyone. He's just not feeling well right now. I have a recording if you need it. And they said, no, it's fine. We understand. So they had surrounded him. He was standing there. Two of the cops had a gun, had their hands on their pistol. They didn't take it out of the holster. But I walked out, and he shouted, this is like 3 o'clock in the morning. What is she doing here? I was like, okay, I'm going to pause. I'm going to back up. And then my husband was able to get out and start talking to him without a problem. So, from a distance, I couldn't hear what was said, but an ambulance came up. It left after about 3 minutes. He didn't get in. Evidently, my husband talked him into about 20 minutes later, talked him into going to the hospital in the cop car. So, they cuffed him, put him in the back seat, and took him to the same hospital that my daughter was admitted to twice. So he was admitted to a psych ward for a week. And then, I would visit him every day. I have to put in a PSA here. If you are an adult, a single adult, get a medical power of attorney for a trusted fellow adult. Whether it's if you're an adult and you want to have your parent be in charge of your medical power of attorney, but please do it. We were not able to find out where he was for 2 days. For 2 days, he could not sign the consent form to let people know where he was. So we would call the hospital where we thought he was. We can neither confirm nor deny the existence of that person at our facility. So after having that break and then not knowing where he was, that was pretty insane. Eventually he got home and he started recovering. Along the way, I'd gained the 40 pounds back. My daughter started having tics. So she'd be doing this. They were subtle at first. And then we started doing more research. found out it was because of her one medicine, Abilify. She was on 4 different antidepressants and mood stabilizers. So we're like, talk to the psychiatrist. And he said, yeah, some people can do that. So we took her down to half a dose of Abilify. And they actually got worse for a while. There was one night it was to the point where it looked like she was convulsing, and she had a verbal component too. It was whoa. So like, whoa, 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 curled up in a ball on the floor and crying and not being able to stop. And that hurts just doing that. Can't imagine what she was feeling. So eventually we got her off the Abilify. I mean, there was no taper on this. There was a half a dose and then none. Bang, it was done. So eventually that stopped. Right now, everybody seems to be doing better and stable. My son's on some antipsychotics, Depakote and Spiridone. We're hoping to get him down off the Depakote because that seems to be causing some liver problems. But that's something we're going to do over Christmas break when he's not having to worry about school. So they're both in college right now, which is really good. They're working on everything.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that there was a little bit of a positive turn there, because you just described so much suffering. And I want to say that I'm just very sorry for you and for your kids for what they went through, especially with your daughter and actually trying to unalive herself more than once, because I spent a large portion of my life wanting to do that, but never trying.
Right.
Anytime I ever thought about it, I knew right away that it wasn't something I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine how bad the suffering has to be where you're actually going to try to do it. And I feel really terrible for them. You mentioned
Do
that
too.
your son was diagnosed with POTS, and I know not everybody out there knows what that is. Can you tell us what that is?
Sure. It's postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. What it is when you stand up, you get dizzy. Your legs are supposed to compress when you stand up so that the blood goes to your brain. And some people, it just doesn't because of the connective tissue issue, which is why some people are the hypermobile, because that's all connective tissue, your ligaments and tendons. And if you don't have that, you don't have strong veins. Not everybody with hypermobility gets POTS, but many people do. What he does, he gets enough salt, he takes beta blockers, and he's on an exercise regimen that's supposed to recondition him so that he's not as tired all the time. So the beta blockers speed up the heart a little bit, so it or actually calms down the heart, so you don't get the dizziness and the racing heart feeling, and you can stand up, and you still do have to stand up slowly. I mean, everybody gets a little bit of syncope when they stand up once in a while. Like you stand up, whoa, I did that too fast. But imagine that happens all the time. Sometimes your feet turn purple because the blood just pools in your feet. So yeah, that's POTS.
Okay, thanks. That was a good explanation. I always like to tie everything into diet,
Yep.
and I'd love to hear what your kids' diets were like when they were young.
So I firmly believe that diet or nutrition therapy can start before the children are conceived. And in my case, I had been trying to go vegetarian before I conceived my son. I really think that had a lot to do with it. I was off of red meat for a while. I was eating chicken once in a while. It was more for the animal cruelty, not necessarily that I didn't like killing animals, but I didn't like the way they were produced. And at the time, I thought that was the only way to stop that. So I didn't like the CAFO farming. I didn't like the mass-produced chickens. I didn't like all the additives in it. Eventually, I started eating red meat again, like right after my son was conceived. He's older. I still didn't eat the best. I was like, all right, fine. I can't do anything to stop it. I wasn't following the guidelines so much because I had followed the guidelines in college, and that's where I gained a lot of weight. Oh, I did lose that last 40, by the way. So
Good,
120 down.
good job.
I got 10 more to go, I think. So yeah, I had already stopped following the guidelines, but at that point I just didn't care what I ate. It was like, it's not important. But I did eat protein again after that because I realized that helped, and I was anemic, and so I was eating red meat, but I was also eating the bun. I was eating the rolls. Took the kids to Chick-fil-A because, oh, it's chicken. Everyone's at that point I was like, oh, chicken's okay. I can't help how they're raised. What I can't do anything about it. Hands are tied. So yeah, our diet wasn't the best when the kids were little. it wasn't until 2007 when I started looking into all this.
So it was probably basically just a standard American diet,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
That's what we're used to.
Yep. Yeah, not really caring.
Yeah, that's how most of us grew up. We follow the guidelines. You go to the store and you buy what's there, and that's what you eat. And you eat what's delicious, and that usually ends up being what's bad for us.
Yeah. It's funny growing up. I mean, we had liver once in a while. We had, we weren't well off, but we would have beef, and my mom would get the cheap ground beef, tacos. At the time, the corn flour wasn't probably that as bad as it is now. Tomatoes, veggies. Like I said, liver once a year or something like that, just because my mom felt it was important we have liver. She hated it too, but he ate some.
That's funny.
Yeah, there's still the cereal and the bread and the milk.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I
Um,
never had liver growing up, but I eat it now. I eat it pretty regularly.
yeah,
I have it every couple of weeks whenever my body's calling for it. And
yeah,
it
yeah,
wasn't easy. The very first time that I had it a couple of years ago, it wasn't easy. I almost threw up the very first time, and
yeah.
my body was rejecting it. I was gagging on it, but I love it now.
Well, good. Yeah, we do liverwurst a lot. Yeah, my niece is staying with us, and she likes it too. So the two of us have it a lot.
That's good. Yeah, Samantha has some liverwurst too. I get it from U.S. Wellness Meats,
Gotcha.
grassland beef. So there's nothing in it but the beef. It's grass finished, and it's just some seasoning, and that's it. Because
Nice.
if I go to the grocery store and I look at liverwurst, it's an abomination. It's got dextrose and
I
all kinds of stuff. It's got phosphates and whatever.
know. Yeah,
It's terrible.
yeah. Like why? Just put the meat in it. That's all it needs.
They,
You don't
they
need
just
anything else.
they just ruin it. They just ruin everything, and they put sugar in everything. I was just talking to my wife yesterday. We had some coconut waters in the fridge, and I'm curious. I've always been reading ingredients, and I looked, and they put cane sugar in the coconut water. I'm like, it's already a sweetened like electrolyte drink. You don't need to add sugar to it. Why do they do that? They just do it to everything now.
I know, it's insane. I think they're afraid people won't buy it unless it has a little bit of sweetness in it.
Yeah, but coconut water, at least in my opinion, it already tastes sweet. It doesn't need sugar. It's already got a sweetness to it. Why do you have to put sugar on top of it?
Right.
Yeah,
But you know how your taste buds change after you went keto?
that's true. Yeah.
So if you're not on keto, you probably have a sweet tooth. So everything has to have this elevated sweetness.
Right. And it's just like why all the processed meats will have dextrose,
Yep.
which is a super high powered sweetener, because
Yeah.
you're trying to give everything stimulation to your taste buds, because that's really what we eat for. We eat for our taste buds. We don't really eat for much else.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we've really got to get back to eating for necessity, not eating for pleasure, because that I think that's um, a mental health, not a paradigm shift we have to have.
It's so ingrained in our society though, and it's something that I'm trying to teach Samantha, because I tell her, food is supposed to be energy for your body. It's not supposed to be fun.
Right.
It can be fun sometimes, but she loves to sit on the couch and watch TV and take an hour to eat 5 minutes worth of food, and it's like this whole big production. Like, you can't, not all the time. Like, food is not supposed to be fun all the time. Like if it's a holiday or it's a birthday or whatever,
Yeah.
it can be fun, but it's so ingrained in our society. And she's only 8 years old.
Yeah.
She doesn't really know the world yet, but it's like every week there's something going on in school, that they're having some kind of a party. And anytime that you celebrate anything, there's got to be food involved.
Yeah.
And unfortunately,
Absolutely.
in schools, it's cupcakes and cookies, and all of her classmates they're eating that junk all day long as part of their regular food.
I
It's
know.
terrible.
And the schools serve it, which is sad.
Yeah. Well, we're hoping to get that changed, right? All
That's what we're trying. Absolutely.
right. So I want to go back to the beginning, when your kids were still young,
Mhm.
and I want to know what was the most challenging aspect early on of navigating their early diagnosis and symptoms.
So my son started having his symptoms first. Yeah, so he was actually getting dizziness and headaches before he was 13. When he was 13, he did have a concussion. He ran into a wall, a door frame, like right here, like bam. So that kind of took us, started us down this path. Oh, he also had really bad sleeping habits. Like when he slept, his neck was like this, like a full 90 degrees, like all the way like this. I can't even get my head to a 90-degree angle. I was like, that's going to hurt your neck. No, it's not, Mom. Mom's right. So the biggest thing was trying to find the right doctor. So, I would do research. We didn't know why he was having headaches. We went to a sports concussion doctor, actually the one for the Ravens. That was only temporary help. We went to neurosurgeons. Those were only temporary help. Kennedy Krieger said, take this little itty bitty tiny dose of amitriptyline and get some exercise and come back to us in 3 months. Keep in mind that he was 6 foot in middle school already. So this little tiny microdose of amitriptyline, which is an antidepressant, wasn't going to help. Supposedly it's an off-label treatment for headaches. So eventually the headaches were occasional. They just merged into each other, and the peak, the worst of the headaches got worse too. And there were no valleys. So trying to find someone to help us was insane. We went to a sinus doctor. He had sinus surgery, which actually helps all his sinus infections and his headache a little bit. Went to an eye doctor, and that was actually a breakthrough indirectly. So he does have problems with his eyes. So you know how your eyes don't stop moving? His eyes actually move more than normal, so it's hard for him to focus on something. So there's actually eye exercises to do to train that. But the eye doctor didn't want to do the exercises with him to take care of the saccades until he got rid of the headaches. So he had a colleague who was a surgeon, and that's who he said, get this imaging done, go to the surgeon, see what the surgeon says. So the surgeon actually said, here's a prescription for a neck brace, a prescription for physical therapy. And we did pick a physical therapist that also knew about POTS. And if this works, you're a good candidate for surgery. So you mind if I talk about the surgery a little bit?
Yeah, go for it.
Talking about the medical establishment.
Of course, yeah, go for it.
So the surgery involved fusing two of the vertebrae. So your C0 up here is like a ball and joint, kind of like this. And then if they do fuse that sometimes for different reasons, but that's really risky. There's like a 10% risk of death. So his is a little lower. The statistics they gave us was 50% no change in symptoms, 40% improvement in symptoms, 10% worsening symptoms. The odds weren't good. So we asked them, well, what if we just, still sit in the doctor's office, have these prescriptions? What if this works? The neck brace and the exercises. Took you 7 years to get here. It'll take you 7 years to get better. You have a woman sitting in your lobby that you fuse one vertebrae. She got side effects. You fuse another one, and now she is not an independent liver. She has to have 24-hour care. My husband talked to her for like an hour while we were waiting, and it's like, this does not look good. It just is not going to work. So we actually tried. The advice for the neck brace and the exercise worked. So yeah, you get 90% of the symptoms relieved within the first 3 months with just the exercise and neck brace. And yeah, the rest of the 10% may take another 6 years, but 90% relief within the first couple of months. The difference was night and day. It was crazy. So yeah, that was our medical journey.
A lot of bang for your buck there.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't have to go an hour away because the surgeon was an hour away from us anyway, so didn't go back. Didn't have the surgery. Can't imagine what would have happened if we did.
No, and I'm glad that you avoided that because you never know. That 10%, that's an awful high risk.
It really is, especially when you get symptom management and relief and actually improvement, because with the exercises, he's doing isometrics. So you're strengthening those muscles. So the stronger the muscle, the more it compensates for the ligaments and tendons being loose. So you're actually correcting the problem. And then the neck brace, went all the way up to the ears and around. That's just to give your neck relief. So, when your muscles are tired from doing all that work, it's nice to give it a break.
And anytime you can actually correct the problem versus just treating the symptoms, that's what you would want.
Oh, absolutely.
And you had said, I think it was after your daughter's first suicide attempt that she was on suicide watch. It was for a year?
A year, yeah.
I can't imagine what that's like. So how do you manage the emotional and logistical challenges of that?
So through that time period, it was hard because there was also the lockdowns. We had lockdowns we're in Maryland, and we had lockdowns and masking longer than in many other places. I couldn't go out because I couldn't wear a mask. I would get dizzy. It's just bad. The big long discussion about masks that we probably don't want to get into. It was very, very lonely, and I would still have to be up at some point during the day. So I was only getting like 4 hours of sleep. After a while, I wasn't managing it anymore. I would just tell myself, this is what my daughter needs. I have to do this. But I had to be there for my son. I had to be there for them during the day, too. So that was hard. I would try to engage in a conversation and it wouldn't work. Try to say, hey, come out of your room and just chat for a while. We can go for a walk. They were in their own little hell circles, and we couldn't, I couldn't break through to try to do our own communal health circle. At least it would have made it a little better. Yeah, that part was hard. I kept doing medical research though at that point. Started finding a lot of relationships between diet and mental health. And at first I didn't believe it. It's like, no, that can't be. Uh, and the more I researched, the more I realized, oh my God, it is. One of the things that helped me deal with it was going back to school. I went to Penn State online for a degree in biobehavioral health with minors in psychology and gerontology, which is study of older adults. I started finding more and more on mental health. I mean, I knew the diabetes and the weight loss. That was pretty solid, but this was before Brain Energy by Chris Palmer came out. And I was finding, mitochondria, energy, like mitochondrial damage can, release reactive oxygen species, and you can eat these foods to prevent that. And so, yeah, I was starting to be swayed. I wasn't fully convinced. um, so I did get Dr. Palmer's book, Brain Energy, and all those connections that I made were in there. So when I was listening to it in the car, of course, by myself, and every time there was something that I'd read before, and he brought it up, I was like, yes, yes. I was like cheering in the car. I was like, I was right. So, I'd been talking to people about it before, and they were like, nah, that can't be right. And then lo and behold, food and mental health, kind of important.
Do you remember the first time that you were introduced to the idea of food for treating mental health?
Yeah, I was doing research on mental health. I was still doing research on diet too, because I was still, I was looking for POTS and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is the hypermobility. So that can be can be affected. So bone broth has a lot of the collagen in it, and of course it breaks it down to amino acids, but it has the right amount of amino acids. So I was looking for that, and then I would find low carb studies or ketogenic studies, and there is a lot of overlap between POTS, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. So there's one researcher who thinks that those are all three are the same condition. It's just that some people feel other symptoms more strongly, like chronic fatigue. You're just tired all the time. He's tired all the time. Fibromyalgia is just random pain. They also get dizzy, but the most prominent symptom is fibromyalgia. So after that, I started getting onto the idea, well, maybe all these other things with overlapping symptoms are related. And that's when I start. The big clue actually for me was the body's sick response. So what do you feel like when you get sick? What do you want to do? You want to sit there and relax. You don't want to do anything. You don't want to move. It's like, that kind of sounds like depression. So then I started looking into specifically depression. There were several studies on low carb or keto on depression. So I found that, and then there was a couple studies that kind of tied depression to other things. So I was like daisy chaining. Okay, Ehlers-Danlos, POTS, fibromyalgia, depression, anxiety, all these other things. Oh yeah, and the researching masks and what it does to your blood oxygen and blood carbon dioxide levels, that also helped. So yeah, it was like one big daisy chain of one caught, through overlapping symptoms, like anxiety and depression having overlapping symptoms, and then all these other things, borderline personality. So it was just, one big scary rabbit hole.
It is a big rabbit hole. It's very deep too. And you mentioned the borderline personality disorder. I was never actually diagnosed with that because
Mhm.
during my time of treatment, my most prominent things was got me diagnosed as bipolar 2 mixed. But if I read the DSM, I could say that I'm bipolar 2. I could say that I'm borderline. I could say that I have schizophrenia. I've never had psychosis, but I fit a lot of those. And I had a period of time not that long ago, a couple years ago, where I did the dialectical behavioral therapy. Somebody on Reddit mentioned it to me. I'd never heard of that before. I'd never even heard of the borderline. But when I read it, I was like, well, if there's 10 things there, yeah, I probably fit 7 of those. So
Yeah.
so maybe I should look into it. So did your son ever do any DBT?
Actually, my daughter did.
Your daughter did.
They both did. Now that I think about it, but my
Okay.
daughter did first. The this was the turnaround for her. She had been with a psychiatrist. Well, they both were, um, who specialized in polypharmacy. Um, yeah, that did not work well in the long term. So polypharmacy, you take more than one med at the same time. So he was a pediatric polypharmacist, basically. Um, but we had to change when I was having issues. My son's therapist was getting very condescending with me. I wanted to help, and this is why I think it was borderline, because he put some people on a pedestal and not others. So people who were on a pedestal and were dropped down a couple levels were the worst people in the world. So no matter what I did, it wasn't enough. I said I wanted to help. Tell me how to help. And one time in the therapy session, the two of them were yelling at me. Like, what did I do? Yes, we had arguments. Yes, I tried to push you because you weren't honest with you didn't come to terms with your limitations. So I thought your limitations were higher and they weren't. So, I was learning this. He was learning this, but somehow I was the bad guy. And so I was like, yeah, we got to get another one. And two of my daughter's therapists moved to Dubai, I think. It was very weird. So,
Two separate times?
what?
It was two therapists, two separate times, or
Yes, for
really
two different reasons. Yes, but the same country. It's like, okay,
weird?
we're done. And they also the second time in the inpatient place, they recommended DBT, and that they didn't have. Oh no! Oh no! More medical problems. So after the first time they recommended DBT, this practice that I wasn't in love with anyway, um, did not have it. Did not have a DBT informed therapist. So we were in the process of looking for one. We did find one, but there was a wait list. So the second time she had been on the wait list for the practice they're in now. So after the second attempt, they moved her up the wait list and started seeing her, and that was definitely a turnaround. DBT immensely helped. You want to talk about DBT?
Sure. I was just going to tell people quickly that if they are not really familiar with it, so regular talk therapy would be more of the CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy. DBT is more work based. There's homework, there's worksheets that you fill out, there's books that you go through, and it's a lot about mindfulness, being present in the moment, and it's really great stuff. What I found for me was that if I'm not doing my diet properly and other metabolic therapies and I'm not in a calm space, I can't put any of the stuff I learned in DBT to use. It's just of no use to me. Unfortunately, I have I have the anger and the irritability that comes out, and it's so easy for me to snap. And then 2 seconds later, like, well, I should have been mindful in the moment, but it's so hard to be
It's
mindful in the
hard.
moment when you have a hair trigger like I do.
You know what? You're aware of it. That's the biggest thing. Everybody has has issues they have to deal with. So yeah, they both did DBT classes. My daughter was a minor at the time, so they actually had an adult, the parent DBT class. So this is what your kid's learning. This is the language we're using. So, they would answer any questions. We'd go through the material. Some of the big things as on the parental side, we would learn all about the skills, the mindfulness, the riding the wave. One is you can't control what emotions you get, but you can decide what to do with them. That's one big thing. Another big thing is the power of and. So two things can be true at one time. And I love you, and you're having a hard time right now. What can I do to help? I love you, but you're having a hard time right now. It kind of negates the first statement. And that's all they hear is, you're having a problem. So the and really helped. So in discussions, especially intense ones, oh my God, this actually comes in handy with political discussions. I understand your point, and I want to let you know that that's not, there are other issues. This is true and that is true. Hey, you can be right about part of it and I can be right about part of it. It doesn't mean that either one of us is bad, So that's actually been helping in political discourse lately. No political upheaval going on at all. Just nice and calm. Yeah, and then my son went through DBT as an adult. So that did help. I think that helped him too.
That's good. Yeah. I enjoyed the homework. It may sound weird, but it just the fact of, it was in the beginning I was showing up in person, but then it became virtual, and for me, just having the weekly appointment is helpful. Having the homework to hold me together, to hold me accountable, is also very helpful. But a lot of lessons that you learn in the DBT is very valuable. Like you just said, a simple thing like you replace the word but with the word and, then it can make a really big difference. And I remember in the beginning we would check in and he would say, "How was your week?" And I would list off 5 things that were the reason that I had a terrible week. And he would say, "Well, how about some positives? What were the positive things?" So he taught me to focus on the positive, and I could see like it helped me be more mindful in the moment also, which is good. So like if Samantha and I were really struggling at the time and I would list off 5 things that were bad for that week, the following week I would start to focus on, oh, well, she's sitting on the couch next to me. She's got her head on my shoulder and we're watching TV. I'm going to stay here as long as possible and really cherish that moment and enjoy that moment as long as possible. It taught me to stay more in the moment. I really appreciated that.
Absolutely. That's really sweet. Yeah, definitely hold on to that.
But it's so easy to focus on the negative things that happen and let that paint a picture of, well, I had a really terrible week. And then once I started analyzing, I would realize, well, yeah, there were 5 really bad things that stood out. But when I write it down, well, there was 8 things that were really good.
Yeah,
And that overweight. So actually I didn't have a bad week. I had a pretty decent week with some bad things that happened on top of it. That's all.
yeah, yeah. That's a great way to look at it. I mean, being positive about things, choosing what to look at. The mindset shift is amazing in DBT.
I felt like it was valuable teachings that would be good for every adult out there, not just people suffering with mental symptoms or people that might be borderline personality disorder.
Oh
I
yeah,
just thought it was good. Like they should be teaching this to our kids in school. It was just good stuff.
yeah, yeah. And I think I don't know if you've seen the studies. There's a lot of studies saying that too much therapy can actually be harmful, but I think that's more talk therapy. I don't know that that applies to DBT because DBT really does focus on positives. And there's also a whole wing of positive psychology that was really cool. And we could teach that too. It's basically how to look at different events. And yeah, DBT really that yeah teaches you to analyze what's going on and look at the positive.
Yeah, and for anyone who's interested, you can just go on Amazon and buy a DBT workbook. That's what I did initially because I couldn't find somebody that was in my insurance that wasn't like a 6 month wait. So I went and bought my
Yeah.
own books. They probably have them at the library too. So you could just take a look there and see some of the
Yeah.
assignments that are involved. Because
Yeah.
like I said, you don't have to be suffering from mental health issues for this stuff to be valuable.
Absolutely. Also, the book The Upside of Stress by Kelly McGonigal is really good for turning things around and using, especially stress, obviously upside of stress, but that, you're talking about negativity, it and turning it around to be a positive. She basically does the same thing with stress. Um, like if you're stressed out before performance, you could take that nervous energy and use it to focus. Especially if you're giving a presentation or something, use it to focus and be precise in your words. But your stress is basically your body's reaction that it thinks you need something. So if you realize what you need and that realize your body's trying to give it to you, you can use it to your advantage. So that's another book I recommend. And it talks about mindset shifts also. Like mindset shift in food is, are you going to be eating for pleasure or are you eating for necessity and it just happens to taste good, you know? So that's a big mindset shift.
Right. Or if you're like me, I've gone from food was fun to food is energy. And now I'm still trying to come to full grips with it, but food is my medicine, and it becomes
Yeah,
challenging. It's challenging, especially when it's involved, it's ingrained into our social aspects in our lives. And Halloween comes around, there's a bowl of candy, and I end up eating candy. And then it's the holidays, and there's the different things that I want to taste, and because I grew up that way. So I'm still trying to come to a full 100% acceptance that food needs to be my medicine.
yeah,
Not easy.
not easy. The other thing is, don't let a cheat meal or a cheat snack turn into a cheat week. And also remember to forgive yourself after it happens, because if you get down on yourself, you're more likely to prolong that. Um, true for anybody.
Yeah, that's great advice. So I've been doing this long enough, and I've dealt with impulse control my whole life and substance abuse issues, and I am able to accept it and move on. I'm 47 years old. Maybe when I was 27, I couldn't accept if I was trying to string some sobriety together and I relapse, and it would kill me. It's it's not like that anymore. I've been
Yeah,
down the road so many times.
yeah,
But the advice that you gave about don't let one meal or one day become a week, because it can very easily. And
easily.
it's never too late to stop, and you can always hop right back on. And the sooner you do, the better you'll be.
Yeah, yeah. I liked what you said. Accept and move on. That was another DBT phrase, and it's big. I mean, you have to accept your flaws and move on from there. Yeah, if you're, say you're overweight, accept it and move on and try to change it. Um, but you can't make changes until you accept yourself as you are, and you love yourself as you are, flaws and all. I had a bad relationship with my son. I had to accept it and move on and do what I could, do what I can to fix it. And now I think our relationship's stronger than ever. Yeah, he's living at home, going to community college. My daughter is actually freshman in college up in Boston, which is really cool. I'll see her Saturday. Yeah, Saturday night. I'll be going in to help her drive home.
Great. She's gonna be home for the holidays.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
great.
nice. She's got a month break. It's awesome.
Wow, that's good. All right, I want to talk about the dietary changes that you made for them.
Dr. Eric Westman always talks about meeting people where they are. So, I started doing low carb and I tried to sneak it in there, but um, yeah, they kind of caught on. Mom, this is making me mad. So,
And you had already done low carb in the past, you said, for weight loss,
yes, yeah,
right?
Yeah, and what I did was go to more of a Whole Foods diet. So we have a lot of home cooked meals. We have a lot of things from the Dutch market. Happy meat. So, grass fed, grass finished. We eat a lot of ground beef because it has a lot of fat in it, which is good for your brain. We a lot of steak. I make a lot of bone broth. So they have rotisserie chickens, and they just coat them in water, salt and pepper, and then bake them. So they're really good. So we get a lot of meals out of this. We get the chicken, and then I get the carcass, and then I put it in a crock pot for like a day and a half, and then get a nice bone broth, and then add other chicken. So there's this continual cycle of chicken bones and beef bones. Sometimes I'll add noodles, but it'll be like egg noodles. I mean, they're still higher in carb than I like, but they're still, I get the one with the least amount of ingredients because my family aren't at the low carb point. They are at the Whole Foods. They're good with that. So, I'd add the turmeric, I'd add chives. I actually started adding seaweed for a little omega-3. Um, I also do a lot of egg drop in it. So it kind of looks like chicken, but they get the egg. Oh, also, yeah, for ground beef, I'll add one egg for every pound of ground beef. And don't tell my family, but a teaspoon of desiccated liver powder. So we do, they do get a little bit of that.
They won't even know it's there, though,
They
right?
don't even know it's there. So the good thing about the liver powder is anything you put it in, you just put it in a little extra garlic or a little extra onion, and that covers the taste a little bit. So if I do beef bone broth, I'll do that. I'll make a marinara sauce or chili or anything like that. So yeah, when we do steak, we don't cut off the meat. We usually get things close to the bone. I'll make things like oxtail, which is basically a round piece like this. It's got the spine in the center. So you're cooking that and you're getting a little bit of the marrow, a little bit of the stuff you need for your nerves because it's nerves. Um, it's nice and tender, and there's a case of fat around it. So you get the fat mixed in, and it's so good.
Oh yeah, I love oxtail, beef shanks too. So does
Yeah,
Samantha. Yep, we love those.
yeah. So, those are the kind of meals we do. Oh, I also make a homemade Alfredo sauce with chicken and peas. We do frozen veggies because I think that there's not much loss when you freeze it. I think a lot of them just take it off, they pick it, and then flash freeze it. So I'm okay with frozen veggies. They last for a lot longer anyway. Chicken, we usually get the thighs with the bone in and skin on. So yeah, any meat that's close to the bone, you're going to get a mix of the cartilage combo that we talked about for your ligaments, joints, tendons, and hair and your skin. So it helps basically everything. Your fascia probably too.
You're talking all my favorite foods here. If I do, I typically eat ruminants only. I usually eat beef and lamb, but when I do eat chicken, I'm gonna want the leg quarter. I want the thigh. I want the drumstick, and I want all that yummy connective tissue. And I'm gonna eat everything all the way down to the bone. Same thing with my steaks. If there's a bone, and I'm eating everything down to the bone.
Oh yeah, T-bones eat all the
My favorite.
yeah. Yeah, I would always do that. My parents would be looking at me weird because I'd be picking up the bone and eating it. You're not supposed to do that. Oh, I don't care.
How long ago did you start doing the Whole Foods thing for your kids?
Well, I tried to, I made, yeah, I guess I tried low carb a couple times, but the Whole Foods, I started like halfway through the lockdowns. So, I mean, we had been going to Dutch Market for like 20 years or something like that. But, my husband would still get a lot of junk food. And I'd be like, okay, I can't eat it, but you guys are okay. So there was this mindset shift again that it wasn't helpful, but at the same time, it wasn't harmful. It was neutral. So I didn't mind it. So I was like, all right, whatever. I won't eat it, but you guys, have a blast. And then, I start realizing, oh, that's actually actively harmful as opposed to just not being helpful. Yeah, I think I started realizing that before the Brazil study on the ultra processed foods came out. The Brazil study where they have the Novus classification level of different level of processing of foods. So something before that, I honestly can't remember what triggered it, but I know I was doing that before I read the study because that was another validation moment for me when I read that study. No, I can't remember what triggered that, but probably some additives I saw cause mental health problems. So I was like, all right, we're just not going to do it. It's probably high fructose corn syrup I was reading about.
Yeah, that's one of them. The
Yeah,
dye or problem.
yeah, yeah. I wasn't on the seed oil bandwagon till much later, honestly. Probably only the last 5 years now that I think about it. So yeah, we definitely that definitely helps. So, so my daughter texted a month or so back, "Mom, my ticks are coming back." So, my husband has a good relationship with her. I have a good relationship with my son. So I found a study that says sugar and caffeine can cause or make ticks worse. So I sent it to him. He sent it to her. She texted back, crying emojis. Sorry, if you're
Sorry.
prone
Yeah.
to ticks, you got to cut back on that.
Yeah. And
So,
is she drinking coffee or caffeine?
oh, she was doing energy drinks.
Ah, yeah. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a lot more than just the caffeine there too.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my god. Oh yeah. So during middle school, she was having, and first 3 years of high school, she was having serious anxiety, and I think that was actually caused by the meds, probably combined with the energy drinks. But yeah, she had to go to a special school for a while because she couldn't handle her regular school. So it's actually a really cool school. They Both my kids ended up in there for a year. Um, they would have one teacher and one student in a classroom.
I like that.
Yeah, it was insanely helpful, and it was kind of like a last resort for a lot of the kids there because they either had mental health problems or physical problems, and regular schools couldn't handle it.
They just cut the budgets in Samantha's school last year and they've got 35 kids and there's two teachers. So there's like one main teacher and there's a secondary teacher. And fortunately, the class she's in, the secondary teacher has a separate room. So when she's doing a math lesson, she can take 10 kids. So it will be a little bit of a smaller group, but
Yeah.
35 kids in one class. And I've been in her classroom and the way they've got those desks packed together, I feel so bad. They're like packed in like sardines in a can. She's got this little pod. Their desks are so tiny and there's six desks and their kids are right on top of each other.
Oh, I know.
It's really terrible. I feel so bad.
Yeah, it's insane what's going on in schools right now. And I was talking to a teacher. Speaking of schools and food and problems, the teacher said that after lunch they can't do anything. All their work has to be done in the morning. The kids are either tired or they're hyper because the food they're serving at lunch is so bad. It's high carb, no protein, no fat. I think that the low fat actually harms mental health more than the high carb. Honestly, um, they're probably like neck and neck, but I'd have to put the edge on the low fat. Your brain's made of fat. The myelin wrapping around your neurons, your neurotransmitters are based in fat. Your membrane of your neuron, the membrane of the mitochondria, that's all fat. That's all repaired all the time. Your glial cells, which take care of cleaning up your brain on the micro level, that's all made of fat. And honestly, ketones are there's a lot of research now on the specific mechanisms by which ketones help your brain, and it's kind of insane. Like ketones trigger your glial cells to clean up all the micro debris, like your tau amyloid plaques, things like that. And then also, ketones reset your epigenetics in your brain and other parts of your body so that it resets and you don't have a chronic stress buildup. Because you have, when epigenetic changes happen at different times during the day, a lot of times you're going to have something set because of stress. But if you don't reset it with ketones and rest at night, that's going to stay elevated. And then it may up activate some other neurons in other parts of the brain and make the spiral worse. So I definitely would give the edge on fat, lack of fat, for more of a causative factor for the mental health problems we're having now.
Yeah. Yeah, you're speaking my love language here.
So how about your family? How much are they on board for you?
Well, so Samantha, we we went the medication route with her in the beginning. So we knew as early as preschool that she had issues. And unfortunately, diet is not recognized as a treatment for really for anything, let alone mental health and let alone for a kid. So my wife felt strongly about using medication because that's what the doctor says to use. And I felt strongly about using diet. So we compromised and we tried her on some pills. And we also started a low carb approach. It was not ketogenic, but it was a
Yeah.
lower carb approach. That was a couple years ago. And because of her OCD being so bad, they can't do the typical stimulants that you would do for ADHD because they don't want to exacerbate the OCD and the anxiety that she has. So we were kind of stuck. We used low blood pressure medication for her, which was like most medications for most people. It works somewhat for some of the time,
Yeah.
but not very well. And then the the neuropsychologist kept wanting to put her on SSRIs, and my wife and I both felt like that 6-year-old kid. We're not going to do that. And I know what they did to me. SSRIs always made me feel terrible, terrible. I've taken so many of them over the years. So we didn't want to do that. And then we thought because the drug Lamictal worked well for me, which is an anti-seizure med, the logic was, well, if it works for me, maybe it'll work for her too. We tried that for her, and unfortunately it didn't go well. Initially we saw some positive response to it, and then when we increased her dose, we would see a couple days where we'd be like, well, maybe this is going to work for her. But unfortunately, it made her OCD really, really terrible. It was, yeah, like to where we could barely even dress her and get her out of the house for school. And we would have to put on 7 pairs of pants. It was just terrible, terrible. And I still wonder if she's suffering from some side effects from that. It's been a couple of years now, but
Yeah.
it just didn't work. And then we got to a point where this neuropsychologist was just like, well, kind of threw his hands up like, well, she's a tough case. And if you don't want to do SSRIs, there's really nothing left to do. So at that point, we decided to do the ketogenic diet, which had already been working well for me. So this was a year ago now, a year ago in August that we started that. And we saw benefits right away.
Nice.
And so kindergarten, she had trouble with her peers and she was in 3 different classes. So she'd have something would happen with a classmate. The parents would call up and complain, I want Samantha out of the class. And
Oh,
the parents they're really out of control with this stuff. So she was in 3 different kindergartens. And then first grade, she was in a special class where it was smaller group, got assigned her own para. We got her an IEP and
yeah.
all that. And then in second grade, we started her in the general ed, the regular classroom, and she made it like the first month. And then she started to have some issues and she spent the rest of the year in the special class. But this year, now she's a little over a year on the ketogenic diet. She is in the general ed and she's been there since day one in third grade, 35 kids. Now it's not perfect. She's not an angel. She does have her issues. She does have bad days and all that, just like everybody else. But
Oh, yeah.
she is maintaining, and we've seen really great improvement and benefits from it. And as far as my wife, so because you asked about my family, so my wife, she does her own thing. She's not ketogenic. She's not even low carb, but she has a thyroid issue, so she does avoid dairy and gluten. And so we've been gluten free and dairy free for the longest time. And but my wife is the type where she does it for her own reasons, and she can go have a bagel or she can have a piece of cake, and she's not going to end up angry and irritable like me. You know, she's not going to have gluten like Samantha and then have maybe a skin issue and then like start yelling and screaming at her classmates at school. So my wife is on her own path. She does her own thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we've always, because of me, we've always tried to avoid grains, avoid seed oils, at least avoid the most toxic things that are out there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There are definitely things that that everybody should avoid, regardless of your dietary strategy. And seed oils are one of them. Refined sugars are another. Definitely.
At least you can make the argument that sugar is maybe food, but seed oils, I consider them industrial machinery oil. It's not meant to be ingested, especially when
Yeah.
it's hydrogenated. Yeah, it's just not supposed to be food.
No, it's not good. I would consider honestly highly refined sugar to be an industrial product too. If you just look at the way it's made, it's kind of crazy, and it was probably the first industrial food we've had, and we've for like the past 300 years or something like that. It's been pretty automated. I mean, it's very addictive, so
Yeah, that's for
we
sure.
paid good money for it.
And that's part of the reason that they're adding it to everything. Even if you look at certain table salts, you'll see that they're adding sugar or dextrose to our salt.
Oh, that's the other thing for salts. We'll do a little bit of iodized salt. I made sure it didn't have any sugar, and like two or three different types of um, sea salts. So that I make sure I get all the different like magnesium, calcium, um, or sodium. A lot of different micrometals like micronutrients like that, and then mix it all together. And we have it in a blender, one of the salt shakers or the
Mhm.
salt grinders.
Grinder. Yeah.
Yeah, and also pepper. Get your pepper into a grinder also, because the ground pepper, I'm sure they're going to start adding stuff to that too.
Yeah.
So if you get the peppercorns, get a pepper grinder. It's a lot stronger taste anyway. So
Yeah.
that's the other thing we do. We do the salt mix and grind everything.
I do a similar thing. I like the Redmond's real salt, and I also have a Celtic, and then I also have Jacobson, which is a sea
I've
salt, and
looked up.
I'll mix all three of those together because I like
Yeah,
them all individually, but I like them all together as well. One of the things I discovered going down the rabbit hole of trying to avoid plastics over the years was your salt grinders. Make sure you don't just buy the one at the store that's made from plastic because you will be grinding microplastics into your food, and any microplastics that you ingest are going to be in your body forever. So I bought a glass grinder that has a ceramic grinding element on it, and it
yeah,
won't put anything into your salt or your pepper if you use that.
yeah. Ours are glass too. Yeah, we went on an anti-plastic kick also. So all during this, we also had a mold problem,
Oh no.
and my son's room is in the basement. So guess where the mold was? So we had that remediated, and that helped some too. But it helped with the emotional issues, but not the neck issues or the fatigue issues. So there was so much going on with that poor kid. Oh my god. But yeah, we got that remediated, and then since then, I think he's been sensitive to toxins, which is why I think the Depakote is starting to hurt him a little bit. So yeah, we got rid of our plastic mixing bowls, plastic cups. I keep one for my husband because it's a big one. He likes the big cups. We got glass cups. We had a plastic microwave shield. You put it over the plate, and it's supposed to stop splashes. We got a glass one of those. Oh, we got rid of our frying pans. We had the nonstick or ceramic frying pans. They release a lot of chemicals when they're heated, so we got rid of those. We have stainless steel. We've done that for over a year now. Oh, we also got an undersink water filter, so that helps too. I think. If you can't get an undersink water filter, you can take out microplastics from your water by boiling and then straining it with a fine strainer. If you're worried
Really?
about it,
Huh.
yeah.
Never heard that.
There was a
Interesting.
study that you can get rid of like 90% of the microplastics just by boiling and straining off, because the boiling will make it clump, all the things clump together, so they're bigger, so you can pick them out a little better.
That's interesting. We use a Berkey filter, and I'm not even sure. I need to look now and see if it even is capable of getting microplastics out of there. I think it is.
Do you know what type of filter it is?
It's a Berkey. That's the brand.
Oh, do you know what type, like what the mechanism is?
It's yeah, I think it's like a charcoal based filter, and then it's also got ones I add in there for fluoride. Even though our town doesn't put fluoride in, but I think the fluoride extra filters, I think they also can remove microplastics.
Okay. I would recommend a reverse osmosis filter because the other issue with tap water, and nobody really takes care of this. So when you first take a medicine, you expel through your urine about 30 to 40% of it, depending on the med, depending on you and how you metabolize it. So that medicine gets into the water stream, and a lot of it is not taken out the by the treatment, by the water treatment. So it's can recycle through, and that can be a mess.
I've known about the reverse osmosis for quite some time, and if money was no object, I would have from the whole house. But they're expensive, and even the countertop ones are pretty expensive, and you end up wasting a lot of water to make the reverse
Yeah,
osmosis. So, it's just something I've never. Maybe I should look into that a little bit further.
yeah. And there's, I mean, there's good ones, and there's our water is actually pretty cheap, so it's not, it's not horrible. And the other thing is, under the sink one, they have a specific faucet just for drinking water, so you're not reverse osmosing your dishwater.
Okay, only
Let's
the
say,
drinking part comes out. Okay, got it.
yeah. So it's a separate faucet for the filter, which I didn't know, but I love it because I don't. Yeah, I was worried about that too. What's going to happen to our water bill? But yeah, it's only the drinking water that's filtered.
I'm going to look into that now. Unfortunately, the timing is terrible because Black Friday just passed, so there are probably some really good deals. I know
Yeah, I know.
a couple years back, I had it on my list for Black Friday, and we just couldn't afford it. It was too expensive, and I've been satisfied with the Berkey for the most part. I had my own testers that I was doing, and it at least showed that there was less ppm coming out of the filter than coming out of the faucet. So I was happy with that. And then I remineralized my water with salts and with being liquid minerals too. But I'd love to have the reverse osmosis, but because I'm so concerned about Samantha and being exposed to these things for her whole life, it's something I should look more seriously into and see if I can make the investment.
Yeah, yeah, it would help. So, what do you use to test? You say you tested the for microplastics in the filtered and unfiltered water.
Not necessarily for microplastics, but just for ppm. So I had like water. So I was years ago when I was still eating a standard American diet. I was eating a lot of pasta, and I loved pesto. I love pesto pasta, and I was growing my own basil.
Oh, nice.
That's how I was end up doing things. So like when I was eating lots of bread and I was doing sourdough, like, so I made my own sourdough. So that was like an obsession of mine for a couple of years. I made my own sourdough. I was making my own basil, and my basil I was growing hydroponically. So I had already had meters on hand to test for pH and to test for how much. I'm trying to remember what it actually tested for, but it was like a ppm meter. So it showed you. The reason I was using it for that case was to dial in my nutrients, how much nutrients I was putting in the water.
Okay.
But it shows you how much stuff is in the water. So I would test it coming out of the faucet. It would be at 500. I'd put it through the Berkey, and it would be at like 50. So
Okay. So just so
I
just
knew
different kinds of nutrients and
right. That would include
seems okay.
it would include minerals too.
Okay.
It would include the sodium and the potassium. I at least knew it was working. And one of the things that Berkey tells you to do is when you put new filters in, you purge them out, and then you can put a couple of drops of red dye in the upper container. And once you purge it through, once there's no red dye coming out, you know it's working.
Okay. Nice.
So I at least felt confident that it was doing something,
Yeah.
and for the cost, at least it was affordable. The reason that I was eating so much pasta and bread years ago is because we were raising our kid on one salary and money's tight.
It
So
is.
I was eating the cheapest possible food, and I was eating pasta every day and sourdough bread every day. And I was also at my worst physical and mental health ever. I had terrible skin issues, and I was miserable and depressed. That's what led me to initially lower my carbs just to lose some weight because I just felt so terrible. I was 50 pounds overweight.
Yeah.
I had a great wife, a great job. I had a new baby. Samantha was like 2.5 at the time. I had no reason to be miserable and depressed and want to unalive myself every day. But that's how I felt. That's initially why I lowered my carbs just to lose weight because I wanted to start exercising again and feeling better.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think you actually touched on something that I've been thinking about. I haven't seen any studies on this, but you know how there are some people that like to exercise? I think that those people just have healthier mitochondria because when you feel better, you actually want to move more. So I think your desire to exercise or not is actually an indicator of your metabolic health.
That's
Take that
interesting.
for what it's worth. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think certain people like myself, I've just always been very active and I've always enjoyed moving my body and it always makes me feel better. But like I can remember when I was 50 pounds overweight and I really wanted to get back into lifting and I was trying to lift again. I was trying to exercise and it was just, in my mind, I wanted to do it, but like my body just couldn't do it. And I was like just bending over to put my shoes on was uncomfortable because I had this huge gut. But I've always enjoyed being active, being outside, not even just for the sun, but just being outside and doing things, being active. I love stretching. I love working out. I've always been that way.
Yeah. That's awesome. You're talking about being active, and one of the things I've been doing for 20 years is dancing. I've been belly dancing and been teaching for the last couple of years. So that's been a lot
Really?
of fun.
That sounds
Yeah.
great. I bet that's great exercise.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the other thing that's really cool is that there was a meta study published where they compared treatment, talk treatment, medicines, things like that, and movement, exercise, and dance. And dance came out on top for depression against all the other things by a milestone. It was so cool. So, so yeah, I teach a couple different classes. One is about basic belly dance class. One is easy moving for uh, fitness beginners, and then a poi class. So poi is where you spin the weights on the balls. You can see people from New Zealand doing it sometimes. I'll give you a link to my video. I also started doing some exercises with my in-laws and my parents, and a lot of it is dance moves. So a lot of it, your weight changes, your weight shifts, you're moving side to side. Lateral movement is very important as we get older. There's certain muscles like your gluteus medius, which gets very weak when we get older, and that's probably the number one cause of falls. So, and and also there's so yeah, that's the inside butt muscle. So there's three layers of butt muscle, and that's the middle one. Another thing that helps in stability is that there's a nerve a reaction that goes from one foot up to like the groin area and then down to the other foot. So if you slip with this foot, sends signal up here and right down to this foot. So this whole leg has to contract first, including that one butt muscle. So if that is slow, you're going to fall more often. Or if the muscles are unresponsive, you're going to fall more often. So doing lateral movements, and especially with weight changes and planned instabilities like a step ball change. Um, so if your feet are like this, step up and down, step up, down, in, like that. Step ball changes, kicks, things like that. Anything that forces you to get into an uncomfortable position where you have to focus on where your weight is going to strengthen that nerve reaction. It's going to strengthen that the butt muscle. So a good way to tell if that muscle is weak: stand on one foot with your foot in front of you. So if you're here, you're going to be standing with one foot in front like this. So if you're doing that and then you find yourself tilting out to either side, that muscle, that gluteal muscle, is probably weak. And then things like clam exercises, you're laying down and then you you lift up your knees when you're laying on your side, and you keep your feet together, and then it opens like a clam. So those are all good for butt muscles.
That's a good one. Yeah. So I'm at a standing desk right now. So I'm doing your standing trick. So uh, I'm good. I'm standing on my right foot, but I'm very flexible. I have good balance and I've been sprinting for I think a year and a half now. And I'm definitely strengthening my glutes because they get sore when I sprint.
Yeah. So for runners, it's still important to do lateral exercises. So when you're standing there, you can just do leg lifts, and no one has to know. So knee problems for runners happen because you have you have four muscles in your legs, your quadriceps. So the front two get really, really strong. The side two get weak. So that imbalance, the push pulling in different amounts will cause a lot of knee problems and a lot of wear and tear. So doing lateral things will help a lot with that.
That's good to know. Yeah, one of the things I've found that has helped not just my knees and my back, but everything is barefoot walking that I've been doing over the past couple of years. I used to always, I always put on the 5-fingered shoes at the gym when I would deadlift because it was better to deadlift flat than on any kind of a raised shoe. And then when I started working from home during COVID, I was able to just be barefoot all the time, and it felt so great. And slowly but surely over the past couple of years, I've ditched all my sneakers. I have only barefoot zero drop shoes, and now I'm to the point in the last 18 months or so where I only wear shoes if I absolutely have to.
Yeah.
And even that is like we went to our town's Christmas parade last Sunday, and it was 55 degrees out. It really wasn't cold. So I wore shorts and I walked barefoot. My mom thinks I'm a lunatic. I'm sure my neighbors probably think I'm some bum or some lunatic or whatever, because I walk around my neighborhood barefoot, but it helps my knees and my feet, my knees, my ankles, my back. None of it has ever felt better. I've actually noticed over the years that my foot has spread out a bunch.
Yes.
And even the barefoot shoes that I started wearing, say, 3 years ago, after a year, I had to get bigger ones or I had to loosen up all the laces because my feet continued to spread out and got very flat from it.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's a really, really good point. The good thing with belly dance is you're barefoot. So whenever I teach the dance moves, we're barefoot. We're not doing that in shoes.
That's great. I want to get back to the dietary change we were talking about. So you
Yeah.
you tried to do low carb with your kids, but it didn't work. So they rejected it right away.
After a while, they noticed the pattern. No bread, no pasta. We were never big on rice, but the bread and pasta were big. Um, that happened. Yeah, they rebelled literally. So I think that's actually so I'm a health coach now, and that's one of the first lessons for me as a health coach is you have to meet them where they are. People have to be ready for change. They're okay with the bone broth. I mean, they'll see it. They'll on the counter. They'll smell it. They'll check it once in a while, make sure there's enough water in it because the water boils off a little bit. They really actually like the egg drop chicken soup that I make, and they like the sauces. I can do barbecue sauce with the bone broth. So that's the biggest thing
Wait,
is
say that
just
again.
trying to keep it whole foods.
Barbecue sauce in your bone broth?
Oh, I use a beef based bone broth to make barbecue sauce.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I like
So
that.
and anything you can use it for anything water based.
Okay. Do you add sugar to that to your barbecue sauce?
No, I might add a little if there's a little bit of an off taste. I'll put a little honey in there to kind of give it taste reset, and then I'll add some more of the spices to it.
Okay.
So we use honey a little bit, but not a whole lot.
Okay. So what kind of changes have you seen in your children since going to a whole foods diet?
Their mental health is a lot better. Like my son's relationships have gotten a lot better. They've never had a temper like I did, so that was that's been better. My daughter's anxiety went drastically down. So between the talk therapy and the meds, her depression was gone, but it changed over to anxiety. So one of the things that was actually new to me in brain energy was that any psychiatric med can cause any other psychiatric condition, or any psychiatric condition can morph into a different psychiatric condition. So her depression morphed into severe anxiety, but definitely doing whole foods, getting the drinks, the sugar out helped her a lot. Um, uh, we had we hadn't been I hadn't used like for a long time, whenever even when I was still doing carbs and baking brownies, I would use butter instead of seed oils. I think that was probably just an intuitive thing, um, because we had a bottle sitting in there for Play-Doh, like when they were little, and I never touched it for food. So,
That's good.
I just liked butter better. I guess it was the taste or something. But yeah, we do more dense breads now. We don't do the light and fluffy breads. And we check the ingredients on the breads. We do more bean pastas, which is higher in protein. It's not perfect. I'm not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. Another coaching principle. We're still in baby steps, but the whole foods definitely lower the anxiety and reduce the friction in the relationships for the kids.
That's good.
So yeah,
That's huge stuff.
relationships definitely got a lot better.
Yeah. And would you attribute the diet to helping them find the stability to manage in college as well?
I think so. I mean, there are a lot of. I will be fair. There are a lot of contributing factors, and they have worked a lot on their mental. But I think that if they had the bad building blocks from a standard American diet, that they might not have been able to do that, even with all the therapy and all the help in the world. I think that it still would have been bad, and the treatments wouldn't have worked. Um, I think that a lot of problems with the modern medical establishment is that they keep wanting to add things, add a medicine, add a supplement, add a treatment, and not looking at the things that are poisoning you or damaging your body. Um, so you keep saying food is energy. Food is also your building blocks. Pretty much just about every cell in your body will renew itself, especially your liver. I think your liver is actually key for both mental and physical health, from what I've been researching lately. So your liver cells will recycle themselves very quickly, um, when you give them good building blocks. But if you don't, they're going to keep getting damaged, and then they're going to let more fat into the liver, which is actually a natural temporary storage facility for extra energy. But it can't push it out when it's damaged, and your brain can't work if it's damaged. So you need all the building blocks, the fat and the protein, to repair it, to repair the damage. So yeah, if their damage wasn't repaired by good food, yeah, they'd probably be in a lot worse shape right now.
That's
But
great.
obviously can't say for certain. Just what I've studied and what I've seen.
Are there any other milestones besides attending college that they've reached that make you feel particularly proud or hopeful for their future?
My son is very social. He actually knows what he wants to do now. He's going for psychology, but he wants to be a professional writer. So he's actually got his time scheduled now, where he has a block of writing every day. I said the only way you're going to make this writing thing work is if you are disciplined. You can't get hired to write a novel. That's something you do on your own. You publish it. So you have to be extremely self-disciplined, and you have to learn a lot on your own, because there's not really a degree for it. So he's taken some creative writing classes. He's listened to some podcasts from successful authors. So he's actually improving that. Like, his time management's been insanely impressive lately. The other milestone is that he's doing improv classes, and he's doing great. He actually has a performance tonight. He made an improv team. Like, there was real auditions, and he got on a team out of 40 different competitors. So that's been really good to see. My daughter has like a whole group of friends. So through her depression and anxiety phases, she would get one friend and like glom onto that friend to the point where it became unhealthy. And, there would be some kind of falling out, and she wouldn't have that friend anymore, and she'd be alone for a while, and then she'd glom onto another friend. But um, with treatment and Whole Foods and everything, she's been getting groups of friends, which is which is really good to see. And that's how one of the ways I measure her success is that when she has a large friend group as opposed to being siloed with one person. It's just so much healthier, and it's amazing to see. She's got a relationship now, so I'm really excited about that. So yeah, those are some good things happening to them right now.
That is great. Yeah, I'm so happy for both of them. The way you describe your daughter's relationship sounds a lot like how Samantha is with some of her friends over the past couple of years. And again, she's only 8 years old, but she's had that same thing where it's like her focus is on one person, and then it gets really intense, and then something happens. And it's funny because at 8 years old, it's like always drama every day too. So it's like, well, I'm not friends with such and such anymore. And then the next day it's like, oh, guess what? We're besties again.
It's par for the course, I think.
Yeah. But for her, it can be very difficult for her when she's in a situation where there's more than one kid. She always wants to have
Yeah,
the focus on the one, and if it's a play date with just one kid, she does way better than if there's 2 or 3. She's always
yeah,
been that way.
yeah, and that's understandable. That could change in a while. That could be the way it is. I'm better with fewer relationships myself, but my daughter seems to do better with groups. So everyone's different, and she'll figure it out.
Alright, so before we get into my closing questions, I wanted to talk about the metabolic revolution a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what do you hope to achieve with your work with them?
Well, the 2025 guidelines are under discussion right now. Go to the dietary guidelines committee page, and the written comments are open to everybody. So go in there. We'll read up on them first. But a TLDR is that they are defocusing meat, and they're allowing other protein sources instead of meat. So plant-based proteins, basically. They have not changed on fat. They have not changed on the amount of grains. They're still trying to push grains. Okay, fruit and veggies. That's all right. We'll compromise on that. That's fine. But they lump in grains in with fruit and veggies, and then lump in meats with high processed foods. I mean, they started to mention it at least. They said, "Oh, we're eating too much protein." So my biggest problem with the guidelines is that there's this obesity rate going like this slightly up. 1980 hits where the first guidelines come in, and diabetes, obesity, mental health issues shoot up way far. So the guidelines also allow for junk foods if they're low fat. So there's nothing in there about talking about the quality of food like it should be homemade 80% of the time for most people. I mean, other people need higher, obviously, but for baseline, should start at 80% homemade meals. So the guidelines don't do anything of that. You go to the guidelines committee page, find where there's comments, and maybe I'll send you a link. I'll try to find a link and send it to you. Write them a comment, talk about if you have personal experience, talk about the personal experience, talk about research, talk about research that they ignored because they ignore so much research. Nina Chai-Schultz is leading the way on this, Nutrition Coalition, and also a Metabolic Revolution member and speaker. They're also having oral comments, and I'm planning on making one of those. That's usually only one person per organization because it's a 2-minute presentation. They cut you off at 2 minutes. It's a virtual meeting. And so they're only allowing one person per organization. I'll be speaking on behalf of my charity. It's called Healing Institutions. And my personal interest is that the food served in prisons is actually worse than the school food we talked about. So when you have low fat, low protein, high carb meals, you're going to be more prone to violence. Low cholesterol levels have been associated and probably cause violent behavior. It's shown to promote ADHD in kids. It's been shown that people in prisons do have lower cholesterol levels. So what I'm hoping for is that they can look into that research on violent and antisocial behavior and see how it's associated with food. So that's going to be my presentation. Yeah. So those are what I hope. Oh, and there's also for the Metabolic Revolution a committee working on the same issue, but for schools. That's like Amy Eisen, Kim Platt. Oh, not Amy Eisen, Sandy Eisen, Kim Platt, and Julie King. So they're all working on position papers for schools, and hopefully one of them will talk for schools. I think Jess Apple, the founder of Metabolic Revolution, will put together a 2-minute speech on behalf of our organization, and then Nina Teicholz can put out a speech for Nutrition Coalition. So that would have a lot of bases covered right there, just with 3 people.
Yeah, that's great. So are the speeches going to be something that the public can see?
Yes, the hearings will be held January 16th, and it will be live. You can register to view them. It's virtual. The speeches will either be given live or you can pre-record. One of the advantages to pre-record is that you can show, you can have it tailored to the audience specifically. You won't wander. You can also have presentations up there, and you don't have to worry about technology. You have a month to know whether or not you're approved, and you have a month to make that 2-minute presentation for the recording. But yeah, everybody can register to get a spot, and that's unlimited registrants for the viewers, and also unlimited comments. So the comments are open now, the written comments.
Okay, good. I'm looking forward to contributing to the comments and also watching the videos. Thank you.
Yeah. So actually, it was funny. I think it was Eric Rogers. Oh yeah, you've interviewed Eric Rogers. That's cool.
Yeah, that's right. As of today, so today is Thursday. Yeah, his show is premiering tomorrow night.
Awesome! I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
So he and I watched some of the hearings that they were debating, and he was live tweeting a couple that I wasn't there at. So some of the tweets were, one of the committee members is crying because people aren't eating enough grains.
Really? Seriously?
Yeah, seriously. So, yeah, I mean the paradigm is so broken right now.
Such
Yeah,
a way to go.
yeah, and vulnerable people have to eat it, like people in schools, people in prisons, retirement homes. When you go to hospitals, that's all you get is carbs. It's really really sad, the thinking that's going on right now, or lack of.
It is. It needs to change for everybody, but my passion is for the children, and not just because I have an 8-year-old, but just because that's the best way that we could avoid the most amount of suffering.
Yeah, I tend to think that fixing the prisons would probably decrease more suffering, because the people who are committing crimes, the ages are getting lower and lower. The other thing is that 95% of people in prisons right now will be released at some point. If they're not healthy when they release, they're going to be causing a lot of problems that will cause problems to their kids, and which will filter into the schools. Higher crimes mean more kids can't go to school because they're afraid. So there's a lot of touch points that happen when you have unhealthy, mentally ill people released from prison without being treated. The link between psychological issues and being in prison and coming out and trying to adjust to the real world is insane. Like, people are on meds in prison, but they come out and they can't get their meds, and then they have to stop it cold turkey, which is not good. It's crazy. It's insane. The deeper there is no bottom to the mental health issues that can be caused by poor diet. I really believe there is no bottom. We're just going to keep getting worse and worse, more degenerate behavior, more violent behavior. I just don't see an end to it unless this changes.
Well, it's coming. It's just going to take some time, but it's coming. We're like a wave, and you can't stop us.
I hope so.
We're getting bigger and stronger, and eventually it will overtake.
I've got my fingers crossed. I'm knocking on wood. I'm saying all the prayers.
All right, so I want to get into our closing questions now. So
All right.
typically these would be my first two would be questions posed from you to your younger self. But in your case, they might want to be, maybe the answers would be posed to your kids when they were younger, possibly, since they were the ones that suffered so much. It's up to you how
I
you want to approach it.
Yeah, I think I want to answer that to my younger self.
Good.
Um,
All right. So I have two, and they're similar, but the first one is related to mental or physical health. The second one is just going to be a simple piece of advice. All right. You ready for the first one?
Ready.
All right. So the first one is, what is a piece of advice you'd give your younger self before you discovered diet? Something along the lines of how to get through the tough times.
Eat the meat. Eat the damn meat. And any kind of DBT tidbits. Power of and. You have emotions. You don't have to act on them. So eat the meat and DBT. I would definitely pass those along somehow, some way.
That's great. I love it. Eat the meat. So I was a vegetarian and a vegan for 20 years, and through my worst of my suffering. And towards the end, I was a raw vegan too. So eat the meat. Yeah, that would have gotten me through lots of tough times.
Yep. Yeah, definitely the GBT stuff was awesome.
The second question is, so not necessarily related to diet, just a piece of advice. If you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Yeah, the DBT, eat the meat, and also watch the temper. But the DBT would have helped with that.
That's a good one.
So yeah, my sister was always in. I wanted to be alone like all the time. I didn't want to be around anybody. And then my sister didn't want to be alone, so she would annoy me to get attention. So we ended up chasing each other around the house a couple times, got into fist fights. I broke a door because I was mad at her. That was a little embarrassing. She didn't no, she did antagonize me a little bit after that, but I'll never forget her face. The louver doors, the bathroom doors. Yeah, I did like a hammer fist and broke it. And that's an image that will always be in my memory, like the splinters there in place in my sister's face. We tried to fix it.
I've
It
broken a
didn't
couple
work.
doors too in my time.
Yeah.
I had the one time where I put my fist through the door and then it was a hollow door and I had to pull it out and I had shards of wood and splinters. I'll
Oh,
never
yeah.
forget when I pulled it out and looking at my arm like, what a complete idiot I am. I can't believe I just did that. My arm was all bloody. And then, of course, I had to fix the door. It was terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, we tried to fix the door before my parents came home.
I think when I did this, I think it was in front of my parents. I was like, I knew right. I think it was right in front of my dad. So I knew right away I was going to have to fix it.
Oopsie. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. It happens. Fortunately, not as we get older. We're mellowing.
Hopefully, yeah. We're rounding off our edges. We're softening our edges a little bit, right?
Yeah, I like that.
All right, so I've got one more question. This is my fat fueled philosophy question.
Yes.
What is one powerful piece of fat fueled philosophy, a life lesson or a mantra that you've embraced on this ketogenic journey and that you think could inspire our listeners?
Your brain needs fat. Your brain is fat. 60% of it, or some high percentage, is fat. We talked about that a little bit before, but it's absolutely true. It eats fat. It rebuilds itself using fat. It just everything about fat is good for the brain, and this natural fats. So your meat fats, but also your avocado and your um, other like olive oil, things that you can press and you get an oil out of it. Those are good. Those are good fats. Butter is amazing. Actually, if you can tolerate, I know you can't personally, but other people might. If you can tolerate dairy, full fat yogurts, heavy cream, those are really good too. But your brain needs fat. That's my fat takeaway.
I love it. I'm giving you a round of applause for that one. That was great. And also, don't forget coconut. You didn't list coconut in
Oh,
there.
coconut. Yes,
Yeah.
coconut oil is good. So yeah, coconut oil is a lot of medium chain triglycerides, which your liver produces ketones from right away. So this is actually a good bit of advice. If you're in ketosis and then you fall off the wagon a little bit, you can either do coconut oil or MCT oil, and that'll jumpstart your body's production again after you had a little bit of a cheat period.
Yep, that's good advice. And coconut is one of the few things on my list of things that I do not react to.
Hey, bonus.
I typically don't really, I don't eat it because I don't know. I don't really enjoy it all that much, but I do over time. I will have it, and I can eat coconut oil and it won't bother me.
Nice.
So have you had a chance to see any of my shows to the end?
Um, it's been a while, and I've watched a lot of podcasts, so I don't remember a whole lot. Okay, let's go.
All right. I'm going to get my get up on here. So I have my tenets in life, and it starts with the ketogenic diet, and there's meditation, there's barefoot walking, there's all these things that I talk about.
Sunlight.
Is to have fun and enjoy life. Because if we can't have fun and enjoy life, what's the point of even being here, right?
Exactly.
I got my little get up here, and I
Look
have
at
my
that swag.
that I have fun with, and I do it in my own unique way, which is fix yourself with fat. I've been asking all my guests to do the tagline for us, and I'm in the process of putting a compilation together of everybody saying fix yourself with fat. So what do you think, Jacqui? Is that something you can do for us today?
I think so.
All right, go for it.
Fix yourself with fat.
Very nice. I love it.
I had that same hat. Oh my god.
Do you really? And the chains and stuff I had from Halloween from a long time ago, I had an accident at the gym. I passed out of the gym and I fell and broke my nose, and they put a splint on me. And do you remember a rapper named Humpty?
Yeah.
He had like a big thing on his nose. So like I had the big thing on my nose, and I was joking around with it. So I went and I got this stuff, and I pretended I was being Humpty Dumpty for Halloween that year.
Oh my
I have
god.
pictures of myself with the big thing on my nose.
That's
I've
awesome.
I've collected a bunch of different, like for July 4th, I have the red, white, and blue hats, and I've got Christmas ones. I've got all kinds of goofy stuff.
Nice.